Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Rangers Review morning briefing for Tuesday, the 20th of June. I'm Derek Clark, and I'm joined this morning for the first time this week by Joshua Barry. How are we doing, Joshua?
Good, yeah, good to be here, Derek. Been a while since it's just been me and you, actually, so missing Stevie, but here we are.
Yeah, if you are missing Stevie, folks, then he is back tomorrow. Looking forward to that. And I think Stephen Purden may be joining us as well. He was fantastic last week. What a great reception when we had him on talking all things Rangers. So hopefully we'll have him on tomorrow as well. But to the here and now, there's a number of little issues that we'll touch on today with regards to Rangers. Before we do that, as you know the drill by now, but housekeeping. Special word for our podcast sponsor, Seneca Hair Restoration, the #1 hair transplant corporation in Europe. If you're looking to restore some lost self-confidence, then give these guys a phone. All the transplants are carried out by doctors, so they are well in the know, and they're a multi-award winning clinic as well. So give these guys a call if that is something you are thinking of, folks. Right, let's talk Rangers. Before we do that, I got back from Oslo yesterday. Wanted to give a shout out. I met a fan of the show in the Scotsman bar. I'm sure if you've ever been to Oslo, you'll know all about the Scotsman. So I met a young lad called Josh in there, incidentally, on Saturday night. I had a good chat about Rangers and the Rangers Review. A big fan of the show, so it was great meeting you, buddy. So yeah, always a pleasure to talk to.
You can't go anywhere these days, Derek, can you?
Yeah, absolutely. We were well oiled on Saturday night, it's fair to say. But it was good meeting you, buddy. Right, let's talk Rangers because there's a couple of little bits of news I wanted to touch on. Me and Stevie discussed some of the names being linked to the club to replace Ross Wilson at the weekend, namely Carlos Bocanegra and Christian Nerlinger. Of course, we believe that Bocanegra isn't returning to Ibrox. Ditto Nerlinger. You've wrote a piece on the website, though, Joshua, about whether Rangers do need a sporting director. Me and Stevie touched on it a little bit yesterday, but I'm in the frame of mind where I think it's important to get in the right guy. I think there's a balance there between getting in the right guy and speed and time. I think it's important to get someone in quite sharpish, really, but based on the summer upheaval at Ibrox. I know Michael Beale has said on record that he's happy doing the role. He is a bit busier, but he's happy doing it. But what's your point of view on that?
Yeah, I think it was just a good juncture to kind of revisit it, Derek. I mean, I think the sporting director of football, technical director, whatever model you want to call it, can be a bit misunderstood. And the piece kind of takes you through some of Michael Beale's quotes on the issue. I mean, most, if not all, clubs have some sort of infrastructure above the manager. And I think Beale at points has said that, he kind of busted the myth that the transfers were a one-man show. He said that was kind of well off the mark. What I think you can say is true is that certain managers working within the sporting director framework, shall we say, have a bigger say on recruitment. And even if Ross Wilson had still been in post this summer, I still think you'd have seen players that are very clearly identifiable to Beale with clear links to them. Whereas with Gio, there was always a kind of narrative that, is he just being handed players? And again, he always refuted that, said that there wasn't I think the phrase was, there's not a Gio list, there's just a Rangers list. So yeah, the piece kind of says that, the plans for this window have been in place for some time. Rangers have a head of recruitment, they have the recruitment staff, they have a manager who clearly knows what he wants. You don't really need, I don't think, a head of recruitment necessarily to come in. What a sporting director's job to do is to oversee departments and bring that all together. And more so, just a quote from what Beale said, because I think this is quite interesting. He says, in that sort of role, sporting director, technical director, whatever you want to term it, I think it's a safeguarding of the club. Someone who oversees the departments, one of those departments being the first team, safeguards the club in terms of future management signings and making sure the strategy from the board is put in place. And kind of ends, Derek, with saying that, Ross Wilson, I think it's difficult to know what his job description actually was, because he kind of disappeared from the public limelight for probably almost the last year, if not more, of his job. But I think more of the criticism should be if there had been a footballing figure like Wilson over the club for the last 3 years, the only real footballing figure of continuity, because you have managerial change, You obviously have had so much boardroom change in the last number of months as well. I think the sporting director should be there to ensure really that the managerial appointments keep the club on the track that it's been. And there's a separate podcast series on what went wrong for Rangers after the summer of 2021, and looking at that Champions League exit and not selling certain players and not refreshing the squad and whatnot. But I think that the piece is basically making the point that the sporting director needs to be in there, not necessarily to overpower the manager or pick the players, as Ross Wilson would say he didn't do, but to have someone alongside and above Beale who provides strategy beyond any one manager and kind of offers that continuity. So I think it's probably a bit of a criticism at what's gone before, because Rangers shouldn't be in a position from 2021 to now where they're now having to rebuild in 2023. A sporting director, I think, if they do their job well, should ensure that it's about kind of rejuvenation in each transfer market to ensure that you don't have something like this summer where there's so much upheaval in the first team squad.
Yeah, let's get to a few of the comments that are coming in. Number of them. What William says, "Come on, guys, announce some players. We are not Rangers. We all speculate on some names shortly, William. But yeah, I understand fans' frustration. We just want shiny new players waved in front of us with the scarf held aloft. Of course, Sam Lammers was the latest one last week. The Blue Yonder says, hi, Japs, looking forward to seeing you at the OSA convention in Bangkok, Derek. Don't forget your Factor 500. Yeah, really looking forward to that, heading over in just over about a fortnight today, actually. So, yeah, cannot wait for that. It's going to be a great event over there. A number of big names in Rangers history heading over as well, so get the opportunity to have a chat with them, and there'll be lots of content coming your way as well on the Rangers Review social media pages, so keep your eyes peeled for that. Yeah, cannot wait. And yet I'm not too sure they do Factor 50 but 500, but I'll make sure I pack my duffel coat and balaclava and the likes before I head out there. You ever been to Bangkok, Joshua?
I've been to Philippines but not Bangkok. I didn't know you were going until I seen it pop up on my social media feed yesterday, so yeah, that's very exciting.
Yeah, absolutely is. Cannot wait for that. And James Snedden just rubbing our noses in it this morning. It's rather dreek down here in Warrington. He says, watching from a beach in Gran Canaria. So, yeah. But good to have your company, James. And then PM says he's listening all the way from Alaska. We're a worldwide show, Joshua, so it's absolutely fantastic having you tuning in. Right, let's get to the transfer news, okay? So, we touched on yesterday, myself and Stevie, that one player that was linked based on reports in Greece was Tassos Davikas, the Utrecht striker. He scored 19 goals in the Eredivisie last season, was the joint top goal scorer. And reports in Greece claimed that Rangers were lining up a £7 million bid, but we believe that is not the case. It's wide of the mark, and there will be a number of players linked to the club, of course, during the course of the summer. He is the latest one, but we believe there is nothing in that. I've seen some supporters online a bit disappointed by that, Joshua, because he certainly fits the profile of the player that Rangers are looking at, right age, 23 years of age, young, hungry player. Of course, as I mentioned there, he's banging form, scored a lot of goals for Utrecht last season. I think he'll be in demand. I think that we won't be short of offers should he wish to move on. But it's just one of a number of names. We should be prepared for a whole host. And I see there's a few comments coming in about another player we'll touch on shortly. But Davikas, did you know much about him prior to the links over the weekend?
No, not really. And as you say there, I think £7 million on one player would be quite significant outlay, wouldn't it? I think the last time Rangers did that was probably on Ryan Kent, if memory serves me correctly. I think you've seen now, you've had 4 players come in, and you've had 4 3-4 important players coming. All the players that have arrived will expect, I think, to play serious first team minutes. Obviously, we've kind of discussed Dujon Sterling a lot, and he'll have to compete with James Tavernier and play other positions as well. Similarly with Kieran Dowell. I don't think many people would have him as a first team starter at the moment, but I'm sure he'll be coming up the road, Derek, at his age with an expectation of doing so. Jack Butland is definitely coming in to be number one, and is at that age and stage of his career where we've covered it previously again, but this is a move that I think needs to work for him, and he wants to use it as a bit of a refresh in his career. And then Sam Lammers, similarly, 26, has had a difficult few years. He's not coming to Ibrox to play a bit part role. He's coming to be a real centerpiece of what Beale has done or is doing. So presuming you have 8 to 10 players arriving this window at a high guess, depending on how many leave, you've had quite a lot of significant work done already, and maybe there'll be a little bit of a lull now up until pre-season obviously starts at the end of the month, and the transfer window's open for a lot longer. Beale always maintained that he wanted to do his business as early as possible. The obvious benefits are that you get to have a pre-season with the team, and we know how important pre-season is for most managers, but I think especially Beale, given he's been in this job for 6, 7, 8 months of actual season time, 6 months of season time. And players haven't gone through a pre-season with him, and he's kind of maintained, I guess, through various press conferences and interviews, he's been one to emphasise that the information that he's able to pass out, or the type of ideas that he wants to put across to his squad, can't really be in full fruition until they have uninterrupted training time and friendlies to try things. So that's the benefit of getting players in early. We know that obviously there's going to be more players to come, but what you would say is that by talking, June 19th, June 20th, you've got quite a good contingent in there already of what is going to be, you'd hope, if it's successful, kind of the next spine of Beale's Rangers team.
Yeah, right. Let's get on to another player who has been linked. Lots of comments coming in. Dean Milne says Lyndon Dykes linked. He's a name that's never been far away in terms of interest and been linked with a move to Rangers. The Daily Mail claim that he's on a short list of strikers that Michael Beale will look to bring in this summer. Of course, Cyril Dessers is another player that Rangers have been heavily linked with. Josh Maja, of course, a front man as well. However, the Daily Mail claim that Lyndon Dykes is on that shortlist as well. Pardon me. Also claims that Antonio Cholak has no future at the club. Your thoughts, Joshua, on Lyndon Dykes? I've got to say, I watched him at close hand on Saturday, and up until the 87th minute, it was the worst game of football I think I've ever seen in my life. It was Scotland, but Steve Clarke had a game plan to set out for a draw, and then I think once Scotland went behind, it was action stations, and the substitutes changed the game. Dykes wasn't the cleanest of strikes, shall we say, but who cares? They all count. But as a front man, would you be opposed to seeing Lyndon Dykes turn up at Ibrox? Of course, Michael Beale worked with him during that short spell at QPR, knows all about him. Is he good enough to play for Rangers?
Yeah, and obviously as well, when you're talking about short lists of players, that Rangers, as every club, will have a number of targets should one fall through. I think Dessers is one that might rumble on a little bit because when there's a difference in valuation between what a club wants, between what two clubs wants, it's a bit of a poker game, isn't it? Yeah. And you've also got to consider what the player wants as well, and what impact that has on exchanges. I think someone like Dessers kind of does a lot of things pretty well without being exceptional at any one given thing, whereas you look at Lammers, and I think his kind of technique is a standout quality. He's a kind of 9 out of 10 in that area, whereas I think Dessers across the board, again, we spoke about this before, there's a lot of Morelos comparisons to him on kind of Twitter and stuff. I don't think he's, especially outside the box, he's not Morelos wanted to be a playmaker. You watch him, whenever he got the ball, he was always trying to play the Hollywood pass to the right, and that had its benefits at points, but I think also could be a bit restrictive at other points. Dessers, I think, is someone who is going to give you a range of different qualities, because he can run behind, he can finish on either side. We've spoken before about his pressing ability and how much he'll give you off the ball, and don't underestimate how important that is to a manager when they're looking to sign a player. Not only what they're going to give you on the ball, but out of position as well. I think if you're playing a front two of Dessers and Lammers, then a good bit of variation in there. Interested to see how that would work domestically. When you need a lot of goals to win the league, and we can touch on Antonio Cholak in a moment in relation to that. And Josh Maja, I guess, would be a signing to almost blow every other one out the water, because
I think that may rumble on though.
Yeah, and again, we had an update on that last week on the website. He's in a unique position as Bordeaux, in a unique position because of what happened on the final day of their season. I think it was a fan attacking a player, wasn't it, which led to the game being suspended, and his contract is tied up in what league Bordeaux play in next season. But if you read about Maja, if you do a bit of research on him, you'll see how highly rated he's been. The clubs obviously he's played for went back to Fulham when they were in the Premier League a couple of seasons ago. I think he's an interesting player. I know we're segueing a little bit here, Derek, but he's an interesting player because as a right-footed player, you normally would associate a striker then would be favour coming off his left side. But I think Madge is equally as comfortable playing on the right side, so it gives you that variation, a real clear, again, ability to kind of outplay, and you can see how Beale would really like using him. And I think that's a longer term interest from the club. But as you say, that could be one that rumbles on as well, because just the reality of the contract situation. And Čolak, I guess, is tied up into all of that. Beale spoke well about him on the final day of the season. I think it was St Mirren in the press conference after the game. Said that he'd only been fit for one game, or fully fit, and that was that game at Hibs away. And people will say that, Čolak's limited and he can't play the split striker role that Beale wants. And I understand that, because, Čolak isn't going to turn his man and run with the ball. He's not going to carry up the pitch. He's not going to take his man on from out wide. But equally, he gives you a lot of energy off the ball. I think you saw in that game away at Hibs how effective he can be, his movement. He can outplay and get the better of opponents in different ways. We've also got to factor in what he wants. He's 29. We know he's changed agency. That was made a wee while ago. Yeah. What's his expectation? Because remember, when he arrived last summer, although Morelos was still there, he was Rangers' first choice player for the first 4 or 5 months of the season. He was very much coming in as the manager's man. He was playing a style of football that I think suited him. But as the point we go back to, Beale hasn't said that he hasn't seen him really fully fit over a concerted period of time. And Čolak does have that knack of scoring goals domestically that shouldn't really be sniffed at, because Rangers haven't had players who have done that. And when was the last player who just kind of totaled up goals against teams in games you would expect to win? But Rangers haven't had those types of players all that often recently, have they?
No. Lots of comments coming in. It's certainly fair to say that Dykes divides opinion. Neil McLean says, I'd personally take Dessers over Dykes. Lots of tight decision, as Dykes knows and has scored goals in the Scottish Prem. It's an interesting one. There's also a comment saying that they prefer Dykes over Čolak. I would keep Čolak around, to be honest with you. I think he's very important against teams that play a low block at Ibrox, which is many. So he knows the way to go. 18 goals, was it, he scored last season? Am I correct in thinking?
Yeah, I think it was about that. Obviously, he had that start to the season, which I think it was scored 10
he was on fire.
9, I need to dig his stats out, Derek. We've got a couple of pieces on the website about this recently, but his quality of finish is really high. I think apart from Kemar Roof, he didn't play last season. He didn't have a forward in the squad who could, I guess, take his advantage of a shooting opportunity like Čolak. And this is why context is so important, because you might look at someone else who scored, let's say Čolak was playing for another team in the league and had scored 18 goals within minutes that he played, and his expected goals per shot was really high, and you'd think, well, get him to Ibrox because he'll just score goals. But, Beale wants players to be involved in all aspects of the game. He addressed this when he was speaking about Čolak a few months ago. And Čolak isn't that hybrid profile of player. But Beale might look at that and say, well, if I can harness those goals, if I can get just 15 goals from him over the course of the season, that could be really important. And for the money that's been spent on him, are you going to get that in return? So I guess it's a complicated one. There's views on either side. I don't really know where my mind is made up on that one. I guess it depends on whether Rangers do get Dessers and Maja, and if Roof stays around, because if you were to have those 4 players with Sakal as well, if you're Antonio Čolak, you'd probably look at that and say, there's not much room for me to play here unless I get into the team and don't let anyone take my place.
Yeah, that's the thing for me. I think Čolak likes to be the main man. He did say after the St Mirren game, he'll fight. He wants to be the number 9. I doubt he's going to be that main man that Michael Beale is going to hang his hat on. And I don't think, like a number of players in that squad, I don't think he'll be short of offers should he wish to move on. But I'm a big Cholak fan. I think he does a job. I'm not saying play him in every game, but against your likes of, no disrespect to your Ross Counties, St Mirren, Aberdeen, and what have you that come to Ibrox, that pack the box in the penalty area and make it very difficult to get in behind, then he is often the answer. Right, let's get to a few of the comments. Alan Stewart says, morning lads, not having Dykes, the lad's a trier, but that's all he has in his locker. Caroline says, we need a striker that scores 20 plus goals a season. Amen. I don't think Lammers is going to be that guy, Joshua. I think when I had Johnny on last week, he was discussing Lammers in a bit of detail. I think the likes of, like you said, the Majas and the Dessers, if they come in, I think those are the guys you'll be looking to score upwards of 20 plus. But it is imperative Rangers find at least one guy to do that if they're going to win the league next season.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Lammers is coming in as your sole striker, your sole goal option of goals. Beale likes to have maybe 3 goal scorers, should we say, in a team, and Lammers definitely comes into that. People will look at his, as we've discussed many times, look at his goal record over the last number of years, and they'll say he scored, I think it was 2 goals from 6.5 expected goals last season. You know, I'm working on a piece with some of his coaches from when he was at PSV, very highly rated, grown up there, played in the youth team with some real big talents, and what they kind of all reiterated is the game he had to play in Italy. I think there was some probably a contrast of opinions as to whether that move to Atalanta was the right thing for him, because PSV that summer, I think they wanted to keep him around. Atalanta played a style of football that's probably quite suited to Lammers, split strikers, high pressing, a lot of the ball. He doesn't get a lot of game time there, and then he's out on loan to play effectively from the bench with Bayer Leverkusen. And then last season in Serie A, he spent kind of chasing long balls every 10 minutes to try and get his team up the pitch. And that's not his game. He needs a lot of the ball, similar to, again, I've made this point before, but Todd Cantwell, when he was speaking about the benefits of playing in a system that gets the best out of him because he's got all of the ball, as opposed to maybe having 35-40% possession in the Premier League and trying to break away with possession, as opposed to trying to break down a team. And interestingly, Michael Beale said in the press release, and this is nitpicking a bit, I confess, but when he speaks about having the same, I think it was the same vision of football as Lammers, or the same, something along those lines, I think Lammers will look at it and he'll see, okay, here's an opportunity to hopefully play in the Champions League, play for a huge club, but also play in a style of football that gives him freedom, allows him to play in the areas of the pitch he wants to play, but also play with a lot of the ball, because we've not really seen Lammers have a full season. Even when he was on loan at Heerenveen in 2018 and 19, they finished 11th in the Eredivisie, and look at a mid-ranking team. So it's a bit of an unknown. He can play as a 10 or a 9, Beale said. I think he'll be a player that comes towards the ball more. He's not someone, as you say, who's going to, or as he said in his Rangers TV interview, he's not someone who's going to just kind of hang on the last line and get 2 chances in the game and finish them off. But Beale wants players that can be involved in kind of all aspects of the play, and that's why I think he's gone for Lammers. But you're right that the task is probably to, especially given the unknowns of his goal record over the last number of years, the task is to probably pair him up with someone who is a little bit more likely to go beyond, as opposed to always be attracted towards the ball. Although I think players on either side of that front pairing, if they do play a front pairing, does need to have the ability to kind of contribute in open play as well.
Yeah. Just deviating away from the transfer news slightly, folks, just to give you, just to update you on the changes at the channel. If you aren't already aware, if you're a new viewer or listener, we now have a membership scheme on the YouTube page. So you can join us for £2.99 a month. You get extra content for that every week, up to 3 to 5 extra videos a week. You can also watch the morning briefing ad-free as well if you don't watch us live in the morning, and there's plenty of content coming your way over the course of the summer. You did a video yesterday, didn't you, Joshua, on an in-depth insight into Dujon Sterling? Yeah,
and we'll do these right throughout the summer, Derek, but with a great piece from you, and we'll do this with every new player that Rangers sign. You'll get the backstory in their career. It was with Adi Vivesh, who worked with Dujon Sterling. He was his coach at Chelsea from when he was 8, worked with him right throughout the youth setup, and then took him on his first loan spell to Coventry. So if you're looking at someone who has a bit of insight into Dujon Sterling's career, he's going to arguably have more than anyone else. And we've also got a detailed scout report on the website as well. So for every player, we want you to be as well informed on them as possible, about their backstory, about their qualities, and about ultimately how they'll fit into what Beale's trying to do. So yeah, a good video with Ewan yesterday, kind of talking through a bit of the detail in his piece with Dujon Sterling, and 2 or 3 more to come this week. So you can read it in written form. You'll also get a bit of the video side of it as well on the members channel. So lots of content to see people through the next few months, or next few weeks, I should say, because the pre-season is almost underway.
Yeah, absolutely. And over 200 members already, which is a fantastic take-up. So thanks to each and every one of you for that and supporting the work we do at the channel. You should see just the join button on the homepage. As I mentioned before, if you're on an iPhone or an Android, you can download you can get the desktop version on your phone. There's YouTube help videos and what have you. So go there and hit join, and you can you won't be disappointed, put it that way, with the content that we're putting up there each and every week. Let's get to a couple of more comments before we wrap up. Aldo says 1 million added to Kamara's price after his goal yesterday. He scored against the mighty San Marino. What a goal that was.
Yeah, but it's a perfect example, isn't it, of how many times he's seen Glenn Kamara score that goal for it. I think St Johnstone at home this season, he did score a goal like that. It's only St Johnstone he scores against, actually, because he scored all those goals at McDermott Park as well. There's a comment that Michael Beale made after, I think, the 2-2 Old Firm game at the start of the year, and he said, it's not as if Celtic's players are all great and our players are all bad. And it was a simple comment, but what he was trying to say is, look, I think what he was trying to say is some players have just been here too long, and that's why it stagnated a little bit. I don't think anyone would be surprised at Glenn Kamara, who was expected to, I think, leave the club this summer. I don't think anyone would be surprised if he goes to a top 5 league and really impresses. Sometimes players just need to move on at the right time. But good to see him and Nico Raskin as well, who, has played the end of the season as a number 6 for Rangers, but you also see how he can create and score and play higher out the pitch as number 8 for his national team in the under-21 setup. So good to see him getting on the score sheet as well. And if you goals from Rangers midfielders from the base of midfield would be a novelty, but if it can be carried back for next season, then that would obviously be helpful.
Yeah, Freddie Faulkner says, just saw who Kamara scores against, St Johnstone and Leipzig.
Leipzig as well, yeah, true.
So there you go. In this comment here, I wouldn't be as downbeat as John is, but he says, with the squad just now, there is no chance of winning the league. There is plenty of time left. Don't worry, John, to strengthen that squad, as we've touched on throughout the course of the programme and earlier shows as well, of course. This is a long window. Rangers have got in players in early, which is really, really good. Good to see, considering we've got some huge games coming up next month in the Champions League qualifiers. But I wouldn't worry too much about the business that's been done. At this point in time, Joshua, I mean, we've not even hit July. I've got to say I'm quite optimistic about the future next season. I think that the business that has been done has been good. It's always good getting players in early. I know there's a few comments saying, let's start getting players out the door. It's easier said than done. You're going to have to negotiate, as Rangers are doing with other clubs at the moment as well. But what's your mindset at the moment? Is it a bit of optimism about the business that's been done?
I think if you're not optimistic in the summer, then you're doing something wrong, because I know what John's saying. There's still probably a lot of work to be done, is what he's suggesting. And you look across the city, and Celtic will be confident as well, getting Brendan Rodgers back in. But I think the thing is, Derek, you look at the points totals of the last few years, and most, even down in England as well. To win a league now, you need to be near perfect. You need to have a near perfect season. Yeah, I think Rangers under Beale, what's probably gone under the radar because they were those points behind, but they did find what he called at one point, I think, a recipe for away games. Something that we spoke about at the time, but going away to Dundee United and Hibs and Hearts and Kilmarnock, and if you think of Gerrard's Rangers wins and successive wins in those games were by no means a guarantee. I think Beale had 8 away wins on the bounce before the loss at Aberdeen, which was the best. I think that matched what Gerrard managed over a few seasons. Obviously, it's from a slightly different starting point, but the point being, I do think domestically, the only time they slipped up was that Aberdeen game outside of Old Firm games. And that was quite an exceptional game, wasn't it? Because you have those chances in the first half and then you concede what is a bit of a freak goal. So I think there is a lot of reason to be optimistic that Beale knows what's needed. He now needs the players that are coming in to be able to hit the ground running in the same way that his January signings were. But you know what I'm saying, that it might not be until this season when there is both teams are starting at the same points total, because it's the start of the season that Beale's able to, I guess, showcase some of the good work that's been done so far, because before you were punching upwards and fighting from a 9-point deficit, and it was always going to be, I think after that St Johnstone defeat, and especially that St Mirren draw, you knew from that point getting 9 points back was going to be really difficult.
Yeah, most definitely. Right, folks, I think that'll do us here. Thanks to each and every one of you for interacting with the show as ever. It's greatly appreciated. Big thanks to Joshua as well. We'll be back again tomorrow to talk all things Rangers. As I mentioned, be the two Stevies on with me tomorrow, so look forward to that. But until then, enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. Bye for now.